Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. And in today's video I'm going to be talking about, well, potentially the Atlantic, in the Western Atlantic, the Gulf and the main development region off the coast of Africa. It looks like in the coming week or two we could be seeing the whole Atlantic basin starting to wake up, and we could be starting to see storms. I'm not saying we're going to get hurricanes all over and it's going to be really bad, but what I'm going to say is I do think in the next week or two, especially if it's in with climatology and getting towards the peak of the season, that I do think we're going to start to see a ramp up in like activity, or whether that's like a depression or an invest or a storm or even a hurricane. Either way, I do think we're going to start seeing a pick up in activity. And if we go into the TFS phase, we're looking at the West Atlantic into the Gulf. If we go into early next week, we're not really seeing much of anything. The Gulf looks particularly quiet. A few showers around, and the Caribbean, like bits of disturbance going on, bits of convection, but nothing too much. But as we go on into next week, and then into the weekend, it's very far out, so don't take it literally. We're into the weekend, and we have got a storm in the South Gulf, and if we look at the environment, which I'll show soon, it does show a very favorable environment, but don't take this literally. As we're going into next weekend and then into the following week after that, we're looking at a major hurricane going into the panhandle of Florida as a 961 millibar storm. As I said, this is so far out. This peak, it's 276 hours out. There is consistency, as you can see in the previous run. It's more quicker and it's more land, but it's really similar. So it's something to bear in mind. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's something to bear in mind with the GFS. And if we look at the relative humidity, so that's basically moisture, anything around 75 and upwards is really high. So as we go on to when it forms, the relative humidity is like around 80, 85 plus mark. So that's really favourable. And as we go on towards peak, obviously the stronger it gets, the more convection and the more moisture there is, and there's not much dry air around. To the west, there's little pockets of slight dry air, but nothing really to the point where it's going to hinder the storm. And if we look at the actual wind shear here, basically right there, it's under an upper level anticyclone, which is basically it's in a bubble of low shear, and all around it. So, for example, on the west side of the storm, the wind shear is going south. To the south of the storm, it's going west. To the west of the storm, it's going north. And to the north of the storm, it's going east. So it's like a circulation around the storm, where in the storm there's no wind shear at all. And when it's under an upper level anticyclone, it can ventilate more. You can have cumulus clouds building up more easily, and it can ventilate and it can sustain itself. And it can just develop a lot faster that way. As we go towards peak, it's still under an upper level anticyclone. It's a little slight lopsided at peak, but either way, there's still really low shear, and it's obviously rapidly intensifying at that point, as I said. And the whole Gulf Coast, Florida, Panhandle, Mississippi, Louisiana, all these states, Texas, you should be keeping an eye on this, and even Mexico, because obviously it's getting to that point in the season. Everyone should have their preparations planned and potentially ready to go in place in case something happens. And if we look at the main development region here, so there is signs in the main development region it's going to start waking up as well. So as we go on into the middle and the end of next week here, you can say there is something starting to congeal, and there is consistency in the MDR. Something will happen, whether that's in the depression or a storm or even a hurricane. So I'm not saying this will come off. So this storm forms first into the following week. So not next week, but the following. It develops, so it does struggle with the wave behind it towards the end of the month and into the beginning of September. So it's a rapidly intensify. And it's the same with the Gulf system. If we go into the wind shear, it's under an upper level anticyclone. It's just in a pocket of low shear, and the winds are circulating around it. And it's just under a bubble and there's no shear, and it's got high moisture as well. So if this was to happen, if this exact environment was to happen, obviously with 28, 29 plus degree waters, it just spells trouble for the blowout. Obviously they'll be heading west, potentially either into the Lesser Antilles, Caribbean, or north, and it could be a fish storm where it hits nothing. So it's getting to the point of the year in the Lesser Antilles, the British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Dominica, Haiti, Cuba, the Bahamas, northeast coast, and obviously the Gulf, and all these places. You should be ready in case something does happen and the storm happens. So make sure you have everything in place, like a generator all up to date, and you have your evacuation readiness ready, so you know where to go, or if you can stay with someone, or like evacuate to a storm shelter or cellar, whatever, on, like, say on an island, or an actual mainland like America, go to the nearest storm shelter. So make sure you have everything ready, like rations and all that sort of stuff, to last you a week or more. And just all essential appliances like flashlights and water and dry food and tin foods and things like that. And if we look at relative humidity again, with this first storm, as I said, it's dry. It does try to form a little bit of a moisture bubble, but then there's dry air gets ingested in from the north here, and it struggles to form. There is a lot more stronger dry air with this storm that gets strong in this run, but the difference is it rapidly deepens and it's a lot smaller. So when storms are smaller, it can hide more from like dry air. If the storm's massive and got a massive influence over a large area, dry air can like come in a lot more easy because it has a bigger influence. But if it's a lot smaller, how this storm is, it has a smaller influence on a wider scale, so it's harder for dry air to intrude. There is dry air around though, so if this was to happen, there might be some intrusions at times, like where it'll interrupt the cold a little bit, and then the cold will rebuild itself, and then it'll go again. As I said, this is the end of the run, but there is consistency. So say I go on the previous run here, it's different, but there is something happening. The previous run after that, there's still storms around, different positions with storms. The previous run after that, there's a storm one more time. The previous run after that, there's a storm but weaker. You see what I mean? It's consistency of storms happening potentially. How strong, where, we don't know. But what we do know is the MDR and the Caribbean and the Gulf, well, could be seeing increased activity. So yeah, and if we quickly look at the temperature, we've got 30-degree waters. Anything above 26 is really high and favourable, so we're fine with that in terms of development. And if we look at the main development region, when the storm heads out into these areas and westwards, we're going to 27s, 28s, 29s, and then 30s. So yeah, okay guys, that was just an update on the potential formation of storms in the Atlantic. So peak season's coming up, and we're going to see an environment of like activities. So everyone stay calm and make sure everything like potentially ready to put in place. And I'll do more updates as the day comes on, and keep an eye on what's going on in like the tropics. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Stay safe, and I'll make another video potentially tomorrow or in the coming days. Bye for now.